Welcome to Drill Talks. I am really excited today. I have Jim Blair with us, and it's great when we see our industry able to show the professionalism and promote and build businesses, but also find time for innovation and to help take that professionalism to the next level. And so I want to jump right into this. Jim, how did you get started in the industry? Go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're at in the country.
So I'm Jim Blair, and I am headquartered in the Austin, Texas area. We have two locations as a water well drilling company for B Cave drilling in Dripping Springs, Texas, and in Burnett, Texas. So kind of the hill country of Texas is where we are. And I got started in this industry. I was dating this girl, and I was going to the University of Texas. I needed a side job, and her dad said, "You want to come drill water wells with me?" And I had grown up on a hog farm. I knew what working in mud was all about. And I said to myself, no, I really don't want to do that, but I need a job. So I went off and gave it a try, drilled a few holes, and came back after about 3 weeks of working and told my wife that because we had gotten married by that point, I said, no more school for me. I'm done. I had fallen in love with drilling holes in the ground. And that was a lot of passion there for putting holes in and developing wells and setting pumps. So that's how I got my start.
That is fantastic. And I think about all the great family business stories we have out there. And, working for my dad and working for my grandpa, as the son, that was tough. But being the son-in-law, working on the job sites, how was that collaboration?
He couldn't give me all the bad jobs because I was the only employee he had at the time. So of course I got every job, every bad job, but he couldn't give me the extra bad ones, and give the good ones to somebody else because I was the only grunt on the site. So we didn't have diverters back then. We air drilled and he would go as deep as he could without turning the water on. And I remember one hole we drilled using a drag bit. We drilled a 750-foot hole in 2.5 hours, and he drilled to 680 foot dry. And it was for a cement plant. I was shoveling. I had piles of dirt behind me so big. I was worn out. I could not be happier when he finally turned the water on, and we hit water just 20 feet later. But yeah, he gave me the tough jobs, and it made me appreciate what it's like to be out there with a shovel standing in the mud for sure. I don't have to do that much anymore, but I certainly earned it.
So going from single employee, how big is the business now? Do you
We
still
have
love?
around 50 employees now, running the 3 drilling rigs and 9 service trucks. And yeah, it's gotten a little bit different.
I would say so. Uh, 3 drilling rigs, 9 service trucks, 50 employees, and you found time in this to start solving more problems, looking at innovation. And that's what we're really here today to talk about is, leveling up our industry. Data is king, information. How did you step away from the rig platform, step away from the job site and find time to start looking at data and coding and electronics for the industry?
Well, I actually stepped off the rig about 15 years ago. I haven't drilled a well in 15 years. I probably haven't set a pump in 10 years. Um, as the company grew, I had to step away and be the salesman. And being the salesman was full time. And I relied on my staff for office management and things like that. Then one day, one of the ladies that worked for me doing scheduling started to show me that she could really run a business. And I was really blown away with how well she could run the business. And so I started giving her more and more and more duties. And I started taking less and less. And I was doing just focusing on sales full time. And then as the company grew bigger, I needed to hire some salesmen. So I hired some salesmen. We call them project managers. And they started doing their job. And I started realizing that I wasn't needed as much anymore. And my staff was actually running my company better than I could. There are certain things that we do as business owners that we don't necessarily do right, where our staff, because they're not the owner, they can actually they can make some of the hard decisions that we can't make as well. And so I was really surprised to see that when I started stepping back and letting them take the reins, how well they would just step up and take responsibility and just knock it out of the park. And I was available for, issues that would come up. But for the most part, I wasn't doing that much. I was working 15 to 20 hours a week, checking in, trying to stay out of the way as much as I could. But I guess I just got lucky with really good staff, or maybe everybody has that option. But it was really neat to see how well they stepped up and took over.
That is fantastic, and it's not easy in our industry, and we see it as we look at the average water well business across the country has 4.5 employees, and how they operate, and it's it's tough to look at all the changing conditions that we have downhole and on projects and troubleshooting from drilling the well to the life cycle and the pumps. And uh, sometimes you end up finding yourself in the field and not able to lead a business or to grow a business because you're looking at a single reactionary problem right now. And so you got a great team, and here comes NightOwl monitoring. Where did that come from? Where did you see the vision for having more information?
So I had been wanting some type of monitoring system for well over a decade. I had actually talked to a couple of manufacturers that manufacture pumps, thinking that maybe they would be the right companies to bring this to our market. I really wanted to produce a better product. And that's been one of the big driving forces for my whole career is how can we produce a better product for our customers? And I know that that's going to raise prices, but I think that our industry needed something different than what our grandfathers gave our customers, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so I asked around and nobody was really interested in it. Then one day I had a customer that I had put in a small community well for him. He asked me to come out to his job site and he wanted to show me something. And I normally would turn down an offer like that, but this time I went for some reason. And his name is Sean. He's actually now my business partner. But he had built a very rudimentary monitoring system for that community well that we'd put in. It didn't have much of what I really wanted, but the bare bones of it would allow you to add anything you wanted. And that was really neat. And after, spending an hour looking at it, looking at the dashboard that he had created, I went home and I could not quit thinking about it. I just couldn't quit thinking about how this information, this technology could absolutely revolutionize our industry. And I started thinking about all the other industries around us that use things like this, and the way it's changed their industries and how we're pretty much stuck in the past, and I couldn't quit thinking about it. And the next day, I called my attorney and I said I want to start a company. And I worked with the manufacturer that manufactured the box to get a contract to be the sole exclusive rights on water wells for their product worldwide. And we started the company 2.5 years ago. And I worked with Sean for a while. He worked as a kind of as a giving me information, that I needed and helping me to develop this product. And then after a while, I decided, what, Sean needs to be a partner with me. So he's now come on this year as a partner. And what's coming in our industry is so exciting. It is going to absolutely change the way we do business. And I just can't wait for it.
it's it's so cool to hear, as you look at the development and advancement in drill rigs or in pumps or motors, uh, the way we build water wells today versus what we did 50 years ago. And collaboration is critical. And taking a moment in an industry where we're always gangbusters and busy, busy, busy to go out and see, your customer and what he was playing with, yielding into, 2.5 years later, where you're here. Like, okay, so you said you had a base, you had the bones, and you started talking to the manufacturer, and now Sean's your business partner. And here we are, but just like everything we perfect in the back of the shop with a cutting torch and a hammer, from as I understand, you ran table drive SS 135s up to, modern day, 30 and 40 and 50Ks today. What was it like to R&D something that we can't take a cutting torch and a hammer to?
Yeah, the wiring that we use on these sensors is 28 gauge. I didn't know wiring got down to 28 gauge. The smallest we ever use is number 10. And I can't even hardly see the wire. My eyes are so bad. Um, you in our industry, if you don't get enough returns, you just double the amount of foam. If the bolt won't turn loose, you just get a bigger hammer. That's the way we do things. And you're not going to do that with a monitoring system. It's technology. You're basically working with computers, and you have to learn how to speak their language and how to work with that. And so it was a big learning curve for me to learn how sensors work and how they communicate. And so different world completely, but it's something that we have the capability of learning how to do. And that's been one of my big focuses is how do I make this so that it's not so intricate because the average water well installer doesn't have the time to learn the intricacies of this. They need something that's plug and play. And so that's been, the bulk of what I've spent my time doing in the last 2.5 years is trying to figure out ways to make this a really simple, quick, easy install.
So let's dive into it. You talk about water well drillers, and this was a small community well, that needed the community saw a need to understand what their well is doing. And where you're located, we got the end of the Colorado right there. We have all sorts of water issues coming up across the country. The Trinity and the Edwards aquifers are two very well respected and regulated, and many people having concerns about. If I'm a water well drilling company, you're talking about big deep wells in Austin, Texas. Would this work for me on a shallow well? Like, what? Get into what I want, what I can get out of a practical monitoring system for my water well business.
Well, one of the beauties of the monitoring system that we've built is that it really is agnostic as to what it talks to. You could put this on an air compressor if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. It's a motor. You could monitor anything you want to monitor in a water well, anything you could conceive of, from the water level in the well to the chemical feed tanks that you might have that you're constantly forgetting to put chemicals into, to even your salt brine tank and your water softener. You could have that monitored. Your pumps, your volts, and your amps. To monitor that every minute of the day is an amazing piece of information. You're as a pump man, you realize that the amps is kind of like the blood pressure of your pump. If it's too high, there's a reason. If it's too low, there's a reason. And when we're out there with a truck and we throw an amp meter on a pump control box and you can see how many amps it's pulling, it's kind of like going to the doctor and getting your blood pressure taken at that moment. But then, 2 minutes later, that meter's in the truck and you're gone. and you don't come back for, weeks, months, years, decades, depending upon, the system. When you start getting that information 24 hours a day, it's amazing what happens. You can see things in a well that you had no idea were going on. I'll give you an example. 2 days after I installed my system, I got up one morning and I had an alert that I had low pressure. I had had a low pressure event. My pressure had gotten low in the middle of the night. So obviously my irrigation system runs in the middle of the night. And about 2:30 in the morning, an irrigation zone had run. And for that whole zone, the pressure was down around 20 PSI. I went to my irrigation controller, figured out which zone that was, went and turned it on. Sure enough, I had a broken sprinkler head. I don't know how long that sprinkler head had been broken. I'm usually asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was so simple to find it once I was monitoring it. So what kind of systems can it go on? It can go on any systems you want. And it's the pricing for small residential is a little harder to sell. Okay. It's going to be a lot easier to sell these for a big commercial well where dependability is a really big deal. But you can put them on any well, and you can put just a couple of sensors on if you want to try to save money, or add a bunch more sensors if you really want to monitor everything.
So we're reactionary, just like you said. The customer calls up and says, water pressure dropped. Pump's running longer than it should. I'm out of water. And we're busy professionals in this industry, and we don't get to the point where we can plan or forecast what we can get to. So if I have this system and I'm able to get these alerts, get this monitoring going, how has that changed your service business?
So, right now, my water well service business, if somebody calls, it's usually out of water. They don't know that the pump's been running too often. They're not savvy in that kind of stuff. So they call and they say, I'm out of water. The first thing we do is send a service tech. He doesn't have, he has a control box in his truck. He's not going to carry a pressure tank. He's going to have a pressure switch, but he's not going to have a new pump. So he spends, an hour getting there, an hour diagnosing, an hour back. And then we have to schedule an installation crew to go out there to pull the pump, go out there and get a pressure tank out there. So that usually delays the job by half a day. And sometimes that means we're going to come try to fix it the next day. Now, we haven't installed too many of these systems. We probably have 15 or 20 of them installed for my water well company so far. But I can see a day down the road where a customer calls and says, instead of a customer calling, we actually call the customer. First of all, we're gonna catch things that are going to shut down the customer before they shut them down. I had a client this last week where we noticed that the voltage on line 1 was getting up to over 130 volts, where line 2 was getting down around 108, 109 volts. And what was wrong was the transformer that the power company had out there was going bad. They changed the transformer. We didn't burn up our pumps. It was amazing. So we're catching these things ahead of time. But even when they do have a shutdown, the customer doesn't know it until the pressure tank empties. But I know it immediately. And so I can contact my customer and say, Bob, your well's down. And instead of sending a tech out there, I can send an installation crew, because I have more information than any diagnostic tech can get, because I have history. I can look back at every minute of the day and see what was going on. And so I know if the pump's burned up or not. I know if the pressure tank bladder's gone bad. I know that well before it starts rapid cycling. And so now I'm cutting out a half a day's time. My customers have to wait to get fixed. And I no longer have to send a service tech. I'm cutting out, having to have that tech go out there and do all the diagnostic. So it's going to be much more efficient for our industry, but it's going to take, us having a bunch of these systems installed before that has that kind of an effect.
Sure. And this is no different than any other technology we've needed to adopt within our industry. We have those that are the early adopters that then have this as a value add to their business. And then we have the finally, I guess I have to go from my black Motorola flip phone to a smartphone so that
Right.
I can have all the rest of the data that I want. And so I'm going to call it audible here. And for the audience, this will be a quick jump cut, but I'm putting Jim on the spot because I want to see what the data looks like. Do you have a chance you can pull up one of your systems running and show us what it looks like and some of the points that we can monitor?
I do. Let me see if I can figure out how to put that on the screen.
Let's just remember at some point a 2 foot pipe wrench was threatened on a computer screen because sharing on Zoom in a meeting is not as easy. But man, we can drill to 750 feet in just a few hours. So as technology progresses, we're forced to get smarter. So here we have water system live. Jim, what am I looking at?
So this is my private water system in my house, and this is what we use for our company for our demo. I have 3 pumps in my well. I have my submersible pump, treated water booster pump, and my raw water booster pump. And so you see those here. And so this is live data. I'm measuring the voltage on each leg to ground, and this is my amp draw right now. So obviously these pumps are off. Here is some history about the pump. So since I installed it, we just put in a brand new system. So it's only been running for 75 hours. Today it's run for 145 minutes, and it started one time. That's that submersible pump. The treated water booster pump, it's got this information here. Now we've got a motor vibration and temperature sensor on there, so it's telling me the temperature of the motor, and my motor vibration is normal. And then raw water booster pump, same information. Here, this is my water level in my well. So right now I have 81 feet of water above my pump, but you can see the history here, and you can actually zoom in and see minute by minute what's going on with the water level here. And then I have really terrible water. So I have a whole house reverse osmosis system. So my raw water tank is at 99% full. My treated water tank's at 90% full. I have a chemical injection, which I used to constantly forget to put that in there. And if I do, it just ruins my RO membranes. But this system sends me an alert when I get down to 10%, reminds me to go fill it up. And then I have my water pressures. I have my water flow. Right now, there's no water flowing. Today, I've used 260 gallons of water. This is my relays. So we have relays. We can actually go in and we can actually turn, I have this recirculation valve that I can turn on. And so this here in a second is going to flip to valve is open. See that? And now I
Yeah.
actually recirculating water back into the tank. So here's all the history, all the sensors together. So this kind of looks like trash data, but if you go in and you start turning some things off, you can actually start seeing some trends. So we can look at my well level above the pump and my raw water storage tank, and you can see where the tank got low. This is an irrigation zone running here in the middle of the night at midnight. You see that the purple line is my tank. Looks like that irrigation zone stopped right there. And so the well was able to recover, fill it up. Once the tank got full, then the well started to recover. That's the yellow line. So there's just an immense amount of information there if you want to go see all that. And then I have things like totalized flow and daily start counts of the pumps and things like that. And there's lots more information. You can do deep dives. You can do deep dives on the pumps. You can here's my submersible pump, and you want to see the voltage and amperage. You can see where the pump starts and stops, and how that happens over time. What happens to the voltage when it does?
So what I love about this is coming from the municipal water side, and we in the United States think municipal water is just big water systems. In reality, you know, 90% of the country is fed by, less than 4,000 municipal water systems. And then there is another 35,000 plus municipal water systems out there that are smaller towns, that are, villages and community wells. And this information right here ensures that my community has what they need. It ensures if I have a camp and I'm going to have a big Memorial Day to Labor Day, I can really be monitoring because let's face it, when we're on vacation, we definitely don't want to have an issue like a water supply issue. But on top of that, how we feed America, our our big ag, like from hog farms to dairy farms to chickens to crops, like having this data as a value add coming from my water well drilling company to my customer, and also my customer being able to see it, allows me to predict when I have maintenance coming up, allows me to plan for when I'm going to be down without water, but really allows me to take one thing, many major things, but allows that to not be a stressor to me. That, man, nothing's been wrong with this system for a year and a half or so. What's going to happen next? Boom, we've jumped back to one-on-one. And I had just said that the ability as me as a water well drilling company and service company to be able to help forecast and inform my customer of possibilities or issues, or on top of that, my customer being able to see these things. Say they're a big ag customer that has cattle and hogs and also could be doing some farming with corn, soybean, wheat, down to I'm a camp that Memorial Day to Labor Day is my busiest time of year, and being able to understand, do I have the capacity? It's all about being able to provide water so that we can
Right.
continue to sustain life.
I had a customer on the water well side that she called me one morning on a Friday morning and said she didn't have any water. And it was for a small public water system that ran one of these wineries that we have out in the Texas Hill Country. And she explained to me that she's closed Monday through Thursday. She's open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and she's not legally allowed to be open if her water system is down. And she said, I can lose $30,000 this weekend if it's not open. And she needed her water turned on as soon as possible. And I started thinking, her water system's probably been off several days. She just hadn't been out there to know about it. And she shows up Friday morning and there's no water. And all of a sudden she's in a panic. And she could lose $30,000 if I don't get it fixed as soon as possible. It's customers like that, the city of Austin has SCADA, right? But the city of Austin has a bigger budget than the little lady with the winery. Now we can have what the city of Austin has. It's basically SCADA light. It's built for your smaller commercial irrigation, like you said, feedlots, things like that, where water is critical. And as an industry, we've gotten used to, we hope that it's going to work. We put it in and we hope that the power stays on and we hope that everything works and that the bladder doesn't go bad in the pressure tank. And the customers are hoping as well. But we can switch that from hope to now I know what's going on and be alerted before a crisis happens.
So, learning curve. I'm sold. I could see value add in this. I can think of the time when I was working in Florida and just my citrus farmers or major golf courses where this could have been a value that their livelihood is run on water for frost protection to water to keep that coursing greens beautiful. And so I'm a company of 4.5 employees because that 0.45 employee, who knows what he's doing, but how do I install this? How much education? What is it going to take me to be able to competently install this on several systems and show this as a value add to my customer?
So your first system is going to take a while. If you put in a full bore system with all the sensors that you could possibly put on there, it might take you 2 days for one guy to put it all in. Your first one. You're going to learn so many lessons when you do the first one. The second one's going to take half that much time. The third one's going to take half that much time again. We have installation instructions as well as installation videos, but in addition to that, we're available to walk you through it. We understand that this is not something that most people have installed. And so we understand what water well drillers and pump installers understand. We understand control boxes and pump savers and things like that, pressure switches. So I have, for the most part, tried to make it as simple like that as we can. And but there is some technology to it. And so we have tried really hard to develop a war chest of instructional videos, instructional instructions, written instructions. I had a customer up in the Texas Panhandle the other day. He put his first system on his shop, and it took him all day to do a 3 sensor system. I think it took him about 6 hours, he said. They'd set their second system up, and it had four sensors on it. He had an employee do it in an hour and a half. So, it's really not that hard. Most of these things are plug and play. You plug it in. You do have some sensors that you'll have to do a set of wires with, but it's really not that hard as long as you're able to read instructions. It's something we found out that guys don't read instructions. So the videos tend to be the better source for most people. We will sit and watch a YouTube video where we won't read the instructions.
Okay. Do I need Wi-Fi or can I use 5G and cellular? Like what are my options to be able to retrieve this data?
So our system is solely relying on cellular data. We have a dual SIM card that can work with any cellular data. It can, AT&T, Verizon, any of those, it can work with. And but we do not have a Wi-Fi version. So it works anywhere. My system, if you go to my house, my system is in my garage. I've got a metal roof on it. There is absolutely no way I could make a phone call from inside my garage. But I've never had any problems because the data is just sent out in text packets. And it tries to send it out. And if it doesn't work, it'll just wait a minute and try to send it out again. And so, it just keep trying until it does get it out. And because it's just a text, it has no problems sending or receiving, even with the metal roof on that building.
And
But we have had sites where there is not cellular. And we do know that up in the mountains and things like that. And so we actually have radios. So you could set up a remote radio if you can get a radio up on top of a hilltop somewhere, and you can radio to that and send your data that way. And you can also use a radio. We have customers who have maybe a well field. They might have 3 wells that all pump to a storage tank. Well, they don't want to ditch 500 feet over here to this well just to lay a communication cable and 1,000 feet over to this one. So we have radios that can send that information in to one hub spot and send that out.
so the solution's there to get the data. And as you've said, like anything, I think of many DIY projects, and I think most of those come at the night before Christmas when the children are all in bed, and I need to be Santa, and I'm watching a YouTube video on how to build a 4-story dollhouse with elevator. Thanks, in-laws. Um, and you find the photos, but the next time I had to do it, I was a little smarter, and the next time, and so we can get efficient in installing it. Now, what have you seen? Do you see pump service companies and drilling companies using this data more, or do you see customers really loving the fact that they can see their data and be able to advocate for their system where somebody's managing a lot of systems.
So we don't talk to a lot of end users. We only sell to licensed installers. And so we don't get a lot of feedback from end users. We talked to a few, and of course they're excited about it, but to many of them, they don't fully understand the ramifications of, hey, my amp draw just went up or my pressure dropped down. They don't understand what's going on. It's the pump installers that get the most excited about it, especially those in the line shaft turbine world. Where I am in Texas, I have installed one line shaft turbine in my life. They're just not a common thing around here.
You're a
We
lucky
don't have
man.
what's that?
You're a lucky man.
We don't have the aquifer flow to be able to support line shaft turbines. The only one I ever worked on was a short set, just pulling water out of a pond. But realizing that these line shaft turbine systems have oilers. And one of the dirty little secrets in our industry is that these oilers are extremely critical. And for the average system, I've found out most people have a 1 gallon oil bucket that's just gravity flowing down, dripping oil on these things with a needle valve. And that needle valve is going to let out a different flow when it's 10 degrees outside than it does when it's 110 degrees outside. And that needle valve is going to get clogged up. And somebody's got to come along and check it all the time, if not daily. And a lot of times it's not the pump installers. A lot of times it's the employee. It's the guy who is the foreman on the ranch, runs over there and checks on them every day. And they may not understand how important that is. Well, now we can actually count the drops. And we can alert you the minute it quits dripping. And that right there will save our clients hundreds of thousands of dollars not having to buy new pumps all the time, just simply because we can lubricate it. And so the opportunities for this are just absolutely astounding. Our industry has needed this for a long time. We just didn't have it. I remember a day when they said that they were going to start producing something called a smartphone. And we all had our flip phones. You mentioned phones earlier. And I remember thinking, why do I need a smartphone? What is my smartphone going to do for me that I can't do with a flip phone? I can call anybody I want to call. Is this thing going to be able to call numbers that I can't call with the other one? Now that I've actually seen what I can do with it, you couldn't take it away from me. I have to have my smartphone. And so I equate this technology to that. Once our industry starts seeing how we can change their world, they're not going to be able to do without it.
Got two last questions for you. First, we just talked about, line shaft turbines, and we're talking about deep set, big submersible pumps. If my business livelihood is based on big pumps, and I have a maintenance program that I've put together, has anybody thought about the value add of, how am I to have a maintenance warranty program if we're not able to monitor?
So prior to monitoring my water well company, Bee Cave Drilling, we had a maintenance program, and we would come out for residential. We'd come out twice a year. For commercial, we usually come out 4 times a year, checking things out. For both of those, commercial and residential, now we've gone and we're pairing the monitoring of the well with only coming out once a year. So we come out once a year, usually in the fall, to make sure that we're ready for winterization. But the rest of the year, we're monitoring it through monitoring their system online. And we're actually able to charge more for that. And we're actually doing less because we're not going on their dashboard and looking at their dashboard every day and making sure that it's right. For everything we monitor, we're setting up alerts. And as long as the data stays within the parameters that we've set, we don't have to go look at it. But we get an email or a text that says, hey, our customer's pump's drawing too much amperage. We immediately know to go look for it. and go look and see what's going on. So it's a way to generate income that is something that you're not having to physically do, but you're available anytime there's a problem. You can jump right on it, and our customers absolutely love it. They love that we're watching things for them, and we're watching way more than we could watch by coming out twice or four times a year.
That's amazing. Um, Final question. What's next? You've gotten here, you got the bones, you're able to do some monitoring. You're talking about being able to monitor, the pre-lube before these turbines, kick on uh, by the drop. What do you got your mind set on, or can you pull the curtain back and tell us what is 2.0 or 3.0?
I am really glad you asked that because, as you know, we are very interested in always innovating new things. And we have two big projects. One is a box we call the Insight box. And basically, you take the NightOwl Ultra, which is our main workhorse system that monitors all these different things, and you put that into a travel case, something like a Pelican case. And it might be a box that rides around on a service truck for a water well company. They might have a problem well. Let's say well, it just keeps giving them problems. Maybe in the middle of the night, they don't know what's going on. They could hook this box up relatively quickly. A normal installation for an Ultra might take something like 4 hours for a seasoned crew to do. But this is a box that we're trying to get it down to where it's less than 30 minutes for a single guy to install. Really trying to make it so quick and easy for temporary installation. It might not be as pretty, but it'll get you the data that you need. Maybe you're doing a pumping test, a drawdown test on a well where you got to pump it for 24 or 48 hours. You could throw this on there and it would monitor the pump, monitor the power supply while it's doing it, monitor the water flow, monitor the water level in the well during the recovery. Um, so that's something we're working on. We had that at the show last year, at the NGWA show last year, and we're going to have another prototype there again this year. It's not ready for prime time. We've crossed a lot of hurdles. We've got some technical things that we're working on, mainly safety related. So that's something we're really excited about. Another thing is we have a partnership with a company called Waterly. And Waterly, they work with the rural water systems, rural public water systems that have to report their water quality to the state or to any kind of regulatory agency. And Waterly has developed an app that makes that really simple, really fast for a water processing guy to be able to input that data and it goes right to the state without having to turn in paper forms or something like that. What they're doing is they're using our system to automatically read all of that data without having to send anybody to the site at all. We have sensors that can measure the pH of the water, the chlorine in the water, the TDS, all those kinds of parameters. And so that water's being monitored every minute of the day, and that information is being sent straight to the state. So it really saves companies a lot of money when they don't have to pay somebody to physically go out there and do that. So we're really excited about both those projects.
Again, the big cities have lots of different levels of monitoring, but the small town I grew up in, less than 1,000 people, and doesn't have good 5G yet. Being able to
Right.
use radio signals, or some of the solutions, because why we've had such a strong, great, proud industry is because private water wells go where municipality infrastructure hasn't been. And
Right.
so that is fantastic. I appreciate your time today. And I think one of the most significant things in our discussions is looking at we can grow a business, trust our people to continue that business, and it opens us up to help promote, innovate, bring the next level to our industry instead of just getting the blinders on and trying to fix, that single out of water. What if we can prevent 50% of our customers from not having an incident?
Yeah, absolutely. Switch from a reactive industry that reacts. We're really good at reacting. You're out of water. I'm going to jump in the truck and I'm going to get somebody there as soon as we can and get you back up in water. If we could switch from reactive to proactive, our whole industry will benefit from the idea that water wells are not temperamental. They are reliable, and we can catch problems before they really cause bigger problems.
Yeah, I would leave us with this. Uh, any good water well business or business working in anything that's moving water and whatnot, as you've explained, how all the cool monitoring aspects, we bust our butt for more time than many other professionals and industries. And we get to that last 2 weeks of the year, that December 23rd, 24th to January 2nd. It's supposed to be like, let's all slow down. Let's have holiday cheer and everything. And what happens? We always have to, who's taking the on call phone? Who's doing this? There's got to be a dairy farm. There's going to be something that's out of water, right? And I just right now, I could think of my grandfather sitting at the kitchen table with a iPad in hand, and I'd go, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he'd go, "I'm checking all of those fickle systems of the Cowper cattle farm that 2 or 3 times we end up in the snowbank on Christmas Eve for a control box." And he would be doing the checklist, going, "Hey, I think we're good, and we don't
Yeah.
have to worry so much about the on-call phone." And that is a value add to us as a business, to our customers. That is just exactly what you said. We need this. We need this. And once we embrace it, we're going to run, we're going to sprint, we're going to have better businesses.
Right. I absolutely agree with you. If we keep building better systems, our industry will benefit from that. I remember a day when people told me that they didn't want a water well because it wasn't reliable, or they literally thought that they were going to have a bucket on the end of a string to get their water. And we can now operate this system like a municipal system with that kind of reliability. And we can do it with a relatively, small budget.
That's awesome. Thank you for taking the time to, go through the innovation, through the history of your business and industry. It's time to consider what are my 21st century technologies? What gives me a new value add? And data, we see it right now, and we waste it on taking pictures of our puppies and turning them into, roller skaters and stuff, when we have some really cool data retrieval and systems that we can be sophisticated and not shade tree mechanics.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And if we don't, our competitors are going to do it, and we're going to lose our customers over it. You're not going to lose maybe all your customers, but I think that we need to up our game a little bit.
Absolutely. And you have innovated the industry and lifted the entire industry along with it. So, you've collaborated with those who are working in this industry that may be competing against you. And now we're all better because of it.
Yeah, I'm not out there just to make a dollar. Of course, I would like to be profitable in this adventure someday. But I do sell to my closest competitors in the water well space. I don't care who gets this technology. I want everybody to get it. I feel like it's something that we all need, and my main goal was to elevate the industry.
I love it. Thanks again, Jim. This has been one of the most fun discussions. And I apologize for saying, "Hey, pull that monitor up. I want to see this." But as I've looked at it, I wanted to see something in real time, and you proved us right here in real time. Hey, this system's out there. It's you rely on it for your family, and you rely on it for your customers, and the opportunity right now is endless for us to level up our companies.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.